Awesome. Just making sure my speaker wasn't too loud. I'm in a room that echoes a little bit. So today's topic, it does echo? Okay. I'm going to turn down my speaker volume a little bit and let me know if you guys can still hear me and if the echo is still there. Okay, awesome. Okay. Well, good afternoon. Glad both of you are able to come in. Throughout any part of this, if there's a question or you need me to stop as we're discussing anything, just kind of throw up or raise your hand or anything like that, or just present your questions. And once I see those, I'll be able to get right back to you. We'll kind of move through everything as swiftly as we can. But like I said, if you need me to stop, just let me know ahead of time. Or when you get the question and everything, I'll come back to it as quickly as I can. So today we're going to talk about building and progressing in an exercise program. Were both of you able to upload the PowerPoint and the slides? Okay. Awesome. Good. So in building and progressing an exercise program, we have our SMART goals. A lot of those times a lot of these meetings will talk about our SMART goals. Are each of you aware of what the acronym for SMART stands for? Okay, for SMART, the S is specific, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is realistic, and the T is timely. So as we're talking about setting our exercise goals and our progressions and everything like that, the first one we're going to start with is specific. What specifically do each of you want to accomplish? So if you have a sheet of paper and a pen, you can start to write some of these down, or we can just go and I want you to keep mental notes of those, and the next time you're in, we can kind of chat a little bit more in person. But what specifically do you want to accomplish? Is it exercising for 30 minutes, 3 days a week? Is there, we have a cola run race coming up. Is it something that would interest you to have a race or a specific event that's coming up in the near future? Things of that nature. The M with measurable, how you know? Again, we have our activity trackers. So if it's something where right now we're getting 6,000 steps a day, ways to progress through that, a lot of times is adding 500 steps each day until you reach your certain goal. So if you want to get 8,000 steps a day, if we're at 6,000 now, the easiest way to do that is adding 500 steps a day for a week. And then the next week we're going to add 1,000. The following week 1,500, and then the fourth week or the third week we're going to add 2,000. So we'll go from 6,000 to 8,000 steps. Your activity trackers, if you have a Fitbit or a Garmin or anything to measure that, is one way that you'll be able to measure that. For attainable. Is it in your power? Is it in your power to accomplish those goals? Are you able to increase your steps? Or are we, again, realistic will follow, so are they realistically able to be achieved? You want something to be challenging but realistic. If we're getting 5,000 steps now and you say, well, I want 15,000 steps by the end of January. Well, that's going to be a challenge, but it's also slightly unrealistic unless you have that amount of time. If you're only given 30 minutes a day extra to walk, setting those goals and progressions is going to be hard to come by the next 2 weeks. So we want to make sure our goals are being set in a realistic manner. Timely follows in what we were just talking about. When exactly do you want to accomplish these? So as we start moving forward with today's discussion, I want you ladies to start thinking about what your goal is and give yourself, milestones along the way. If it's, I want to exercise and be consistent with that 3 days a week for 30 minutes. And when we discuss things, it doesn't have to be in the next 2 weeks. We can always start with 1 day, work our way to 2 days, and then 3 days. In progression, you want to have a baseline of where you're at now, but you also want to have an end point or a maintain point. So if we say I'm exercising 1 to 2 days a week now, but I'd like to get to 3 to 4, when exactly would you want to accomplish that? In the next month, 2 months, 3 or 6 months? each of you have a current exercise routine that you're currently doing? Sort of. Okay, are we walking? Diana, Lynn? Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. We want you to, and that's where the attainable and realistic and timely come into play, is we want you to kind of grasp one thing at a time so you don't overload yourself and in setting unrealistic goals at that point. Like, try to maintain one thing at a time, and then once you get that under control, then we'll start to add in other things. Your goals we want them to be specific, but it's specific to each discipline that we'll talk to you about in the program. We want you to challenge yourself, but maintaining your program throughout is going to be key. You guys comfortable with the S.M.A.R.T goals and everything that we have up on the screen? Good. It'll take some time to get used to the acronym. We have it posted around here a few places, and I'll try to post a few more. And the next time you ladies are in the clinic for whatever reason, if you want that written down, we can always print you out something. But just knowing those, always set where you're at now, your ground floor, and you want to also know how high you want that floor to go, or where your ceiling is, and making sure that your floor always increases. The stairs that you go up daily, realistically, literally and figuratively, you want those stairs to always follow you up. So as you go higher and higher in your challenges and your progression, your floor level will increase right behind you. So for whatever reason, if you start working out 3 days a week, 30 minutes a day for the next 5 months, and then we have to take 2 weeks off, whether it's sick or vacation, your floor isn't going to be where it is right now. Your progression has gotten you to that point, so we might fall back a little bit just to kind of get back in the swing of things, but you shouldn't have to start all over again based on what you progressed through those first 5 to 6 months. Everyone comfortable with that? Good. The FITT principle in your volume and progression. So FITT, your frequency, how often you're going to exercise. But we, show of hands, the sort of, are we at 2 days a week sort of exercising? Three to four, good. So how hard, right now, we always ask you ladies the 1 to 10 rate of perceived exertion when you come in to do our exercise evaluations. And what that allows us to do is measure your baseline to see where you're at now. So when you're on your own and you're exercising 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or 4 days a week, we want you to also look at your intensity level of each of those exercises. So if you're walking casually, walking dogs, or walking with spouses, friends of that nature, and you're just walking casually for 30 to 45 minutes, and you don't feel like your heart rate is up that high, but your goal, which we were talking about earlier, might be to walk a 5K or be able to walk for an hour without being out of breath. So your intensity level is one way that we're going to progress through that. So if you're walking now and your intensity level is at 6 or 7, but you can only maintain that for 5 to 6 minutes at a time, which is perfectly okay right now, we want to be able to maintain that walking speed or pace for a greater distance. So instead of the 5 or 10 minutes, we want to be able to go for 30 minutes, but it'll also allow your heart rate to come back down, which entails the type and time. What kind of exercises are we doing, and how long are you going to work out? Even if we're only able to work out for 5 minutes right now, your end goal may be 30 minutes 1 month from now. So adding minutes to each workout session is how we want to progress through each of those. The volume, the frequency, intensity, and time. How often we're doing something, how hard we're working in intensity, and how long that workout is. So if we're working out 3 days a week for 30 minutes and you want your heart rate to get above 120, 130, depending on your goals, what we have talked about, Okay. And adjusting your exercise variables in order to see continued success. So if your main goal is to increase your cardiovascular endurance, but you aren't doing enough cardiovascular exercise as far as walking, riding the bike, swimming, doing sports-related activities, hiking, things of that nature, but you want to do strength training specific exercises, but your goal is to be able to walk a 5K in a certain amount of time, then we have to readjust those goals and go back to the SMART goals, looking at what your end goal would be and how we're going to progress through that. Everyone okay with the FITT principle? Have you ladies seen the FITT chart before? Kathy, you haven't, or you're okay with it, just not seen it? Okay. Are you comfortable? Are you ladies comfortable how I just explained each of those acronyms and things like that? Good. So while I'm talking and we're reading and everything, just kind of jot down a little goal. It could be 1, 2, or 3 goals. It could be a short-term goal that you want to reach, mid-term, and in the long term, which I always tell folks, program or weight management's a lifestyle change, but you want to have that third goal be the longest one, and it's a forever moving goal. So number 3, it could be sliding. From now until 6 months or a year from now, number 3 can move. So you will theoretically, you'll get to those goals, but it should always be the one that changes. Because as you progress through everything, number 3 should always be just a little bit more out of reach. Because once you get 1 and 2, number 3 gradually increases on the intensity, how long you're going to walk or how often you're going to be exercising. Okay? So 1 and 2 kind of stay put, but 3 forever moves. Once you get there, then we have to readjust the goals. Using the FITT principle will help you ladies plan your workouts a little bit better. And I always tell folks, it doesn't matter what type of exercise you're doing, we just want you to move. Movement is activity, and activity relates into exercise. And as we talked about, progressively gaining strength and cardiovascular endurance, the principles of progression. Keeping your goals in line with what your workouts are looking like. If our goals aren't lining up with our workouts and we remeasure those things in 4 to 8 weeks and our goals haven't been met, then we have to look back and see what we did wrong or how we trailed off the track a little bit. So changing 2 components of the FITT principle in one workout. We don't want you to hurt yourself in anything that you do. We kind of want you to take your time. So if your goal is main things we start out with are 2 to 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps when we're doing resistance training. And when you're training with me, I'll give you a heads up, next week we're going to increase our weights a little bit. We're going to progress. Mainly we want you to increase your lean muscle mass. So when we measure those and everything, we want you to increase your strength. A common misnomer is you're going to build these big bulging muscles, which isn't the case. So what we want you to do is increase from 2 sets of 15 to 2 sets of 20, and then when we get to doing that repetitively, we'll go to 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 12, 3 sets of 15, 3 sets of 20. We're consistently doing 3 sets of 20, then it's time to increase our weight. And from there, we'll go back to the 2 sets of 10 model, but we haven't increased weight. What we're doing there is allowing your body the adjustment period of increasing one of those at the same time. If we go from 3 sets of 20 at 10 pounds and you want to do 3 sets of 20 at 15 pounds, you've just bumped up the workload. We have increased the weight, but you've also increased the volume. So we want to choose which one of those we want to do it at the time, and then we can increase the next time with the other. As you can see at the bottom, increase the number of reps before increasing your weight, or increase the length of cardio before adding an incline. So if we're walking 30 minutes a day on the treadmill, now we're walking outside for 30 minutes, but you'd like to walk for 35, that's fine. Instead of walking, I'm going to walk 35 minutes, but I'm also going to start walking more hills at the same time. your body won't have a chance to adjust to the distance as well as the incline, which will make your legs burn a little bit more. So are we walking, ladies, outside, or do we prefer indoors on the treadmill? And if you type TM, then I'll know treadmill. If you hit elliptical at EP, I'll know it's one of those short acronyms and things like that. Indoor, outdoor, cycle. What types of cardio endurance training are we doing? Walking at the Y. Good. I agree. We had our walking group outside. So we have walking inside, walking outside, and cycling, all very different. So walking, I'll start with the walking. Treadmill walking is a lot different than walking outside. First off, unless you're walking with someone, it's hard to generate the same walking speeds on a treadmill and walking outside unless we start to understand the pace. So as you're walking now, for whatever time, I want you to start thinking about how you want to progress the distance that you're going to walk, or you want to progress the intensity. So increasing your volume, you can do both, but increasing the walking distance, we're going to go more for cardio endurance, whether it's on the bike. I'll get to that question just shortly, Lynn. Give me 1 second. Whether we're on a bike or walking on the treadmill or inside or outside, choose which one. You want to go a little further? Bike and treadmill have the incline, and the bike has the resistance level. So choose the distance first, and once we get that distance down pat, then we can go ahead and add a little bit more incline to the treadmill, or we can add some resistance to the bike. But adding both at the same time, we're going to feel a drawback, and you might hit a little bit of a wall, and it'll cause you to sort of pull back and may not want to go work out as much. So 2 models for that. I'll answer your question really quickly, Lynn. Walking on a treadmill with no incline faster, or to go slower on an incline? Both. It's good. So when you're walking, if you're going to walk for 20 to 30 minutes, you kind of use the odd number, even number theory. So walk for 2 minutes, get your warm up, 3 minutes and everything. From there, on every odd minute, you choose. So for a minute, I want you to walk a little faster with no incline. And then as you want to increase your incline, slow down your speed a little bit and bump your incline up to 5% or higher. Walking on a treadmill at 1%, 1 to 2% is like walking outside on the asphalt, sidewalk, and everything like that. So if we're walking on a treadmill, we want to have a 1 to 2% incline to emulate what we would be walking outside. But choose one of the two that you want to walk at and kind of teeter it back and forth. And what you're doing there is increasing your intensity level, which will increase your cardiovascular endurance. And the same thing on a bike. If we're riding and you don't have the resistance up much, but you want to ride a little faster, so every 2 minutes or 3 minutes or so, for about 30 seconds to a minute, I want you to increase the pedal speed and your resistance level, and then kind of tone it back down a little bit. So in that 30-second to 60-second block, you're going to increase your intensity. Does that make a little more sense? Are you asking if I like interval training? I think it improves your cardiovascular endurance, and also helps with burning body fat at a little higher rate. When we're doing our active resistance training, we're building that lean muscle mass. And the interval training that you ladies seem to be wanting to do more of on the treadmill or the bike, you're going to tap into some of that fat burning. So we're able, as we're building our lean muscle mass tissue and everything, and you're doing your fat burning models, which are these interval trainings when you're walking a little higher with the incline and your speed isn't up as high, you're still burning the same amount of calories and somewhat a little bit higher rate, because you're challenging yourself walking uphill. Those larger muscle groups in your thighs and the backside of your legs, your hamstrings and glutes and quadriceps are working a little bit more intensely than if we're walking on a flat surface. Great idea, Kathy. Again, so that's your interval training, and whether you know it or not, that's what we're doing, is you're creating a little bit more charge So if your goal is to increase your intensity level during your workouts, that would be a way that you're able to be specific about that, but also a way to measure it. And of course, attaining that. How would you increase your intensity level? Well, you're going to pedal faster every other commercial. If there's a commercial about, a car, like they're selling a car, I want you to pedal a little faster. Or anytime there is a medication commercial, which I feel like nowadays is every other commercial, you're going to pedal a little faster, or you're going to increase the resistance, whether on the incline or the resistance on a bike. So we talk about the 5 modes of training to focus on when building an exercise program. We talked a little bit about the cardiovascular endurance training, which with our bike and our treadmills, walking inside, outside, whether indoor track at the Y, walking outside, weather permitting. Our strength training, which we stress a lot of, flexibility and range of motion training. So with that, we have our stretching. We also have yoga, Pilates. Yoga is a form of strength training, but it also helps a lot with your flexibility and range of motion. What we're doing in those classes that relates to balance and relaxation, you can kind of lump yoga all into those 3 forms of strength training and cardiovascular endurance. Not as much cardiovascular endurance in yoga. When you're doing hot yoga, you're out of energy and muscles hurting everything. But we look more as being a static strength training module. Ladies doing strength training, resistance training on your own currently, or any form of resistance or flexibility or balance training, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, things of that nature. Are we using any free weights or machine weights? Okay, so with your strength training model, we talked about a little bit earlier, whether it's yoga, Pilates. So the class itself is only 15 minutes, Kathy? So that's how long you were able to be in there. Okay, so from that, we have 15 minutes of that one, but then we can progress into maybe a 30-minute yoga class. Continue to do the 15 minutes, but then if you're able to do, 15 or 30 minutes of stretching on your own, that's how you're able to double those things. And Lynn, what kind of things are we doing at the fitness club? Good. So with those, you have your models. When we're taking fitness classes, the pound class, which is intense, Zumba class, you have different levels of each of these classes. Sometimes they're broken down into a beginner or more moderate level. Zumba goal, I think, is, I'm not sure if it's a less advanced, but like you have certain intensity levels of Zumba. The pound class is very intense. So on those training modalities, what you're looking at is your intensity or your heart rate. When we're doing something like that now, if you're taking breaks more often, every 2 to 3 minutes, right now we're taking a break. But you want to say, I want to be able to work for 5 minutes or 6 minutes before I have to stop and get water. What we're doing there is you're increasing the amount of time in between your breaks, but you're also increasing your intensity level. So what you're going to do there is bring your heart rate back down a little bit. It may seem like you can't do that, but the longer you do something over a period of time, whether it's that day or weeks or months, your body's going to start to become adapt to it. And if you start out with a 15-minute class now, we progress towards 30. In that time period, we would hope that your heart rate would kind of adapt to the 30, which we would then again try to find more intensity. Zumba, start out now. I haven't taken a Zumba class, I've watched them, but you're starting out now, you're dancing, the rhythm's going, you're able to keep up, you don't have to take as many breaks. Once you learn the moves, a way to increase your intensity level and increase that cardiovascular endurance is go faster. You should be looking for more advanced classes when we get to that point. And it doesn't have to be in the next week or so. You just want to have a guideline or an outlook. There's a class that you're taking now that's more moderate, a little less intense, but there's also a more intense class later in the week. Circle that, put a date to it, a month out, and say, I want to try this class and see where I'm at. And the first time you try it, you can kind of gauge where you want to get to, and what are the things from Zumba 1 to Zumba 2 that you need to do and work on to be able to do that class without taking a break every 2 minutes and only need 3 breaks in an hour class. That's ways that you can start to progress through your exercise program with cardiovascular, whether doing classes in the Y or outside of the Y at the club or anything like that. Is that all relative to what we've been talking about so far? Feel comfortable increasing your intensity taking classes? Good. And I'm all for classes. Another way to progress through those is taking different types of classes. So each of you listed, you had Zumba, we had Pound in there. So if those gyms have each of those, it's not a bad idea to take both of those. You don't have to do them the same day, but the more variety that you give your body, the better adaptive it's going to become in a shorter amount of time. If you're continually doing the same exercises over and over, there's a way for us to measure those things and progress through, but also doing something a little different. If we run every day, at a certain point, your body will start to break down and it'll start to hurt, and you're only going to be able to increase your intensity so much. But if you take it and you go from Zumba to Pound, and those are somewhat, the intensity level may be the same, but they're 2 different modules of exercise-related activity. So being able to take Zumba, then go take Pound, lets you see where you stand with each of those. Okay, so variety is always a good thing. Take as many classes as you can. Write down how you feel after each class, where your intensity level was. If you want to do a manual heart rate check, you can. But also, I judge it by water. Like if you start out with a 16-ounce bottle of water, how much of that water is left when you get done with class, or did you have to fill it up again? And then your shirt, like if you wear a lighter colored shirt, did it turn out to be darker with the amount of sweat type things? Those are ways to measure how hard you're working in classes. It may seem a little odd, but it's ways that you're able to do that without knowing your heart rate. Again, a little bit more on the FITT principle. Most days of the week is 3 to 5. So our intensity, we take your 220 minus your age, and that gives you your max heart rate. We typically want you ladies to work out in between 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. Be moderate to somewhat hard on a 3 to 4 scale out of 10. So if we're able to measure those, so you write those down, find your max heart rate, and then multiply it by 0.60 or 0.70, and that's where the length of your workout, the majority of your workout, you should stay in that area. So if we do a 45-minute workout, 5 warm-up, 5 cool-down leaves you with 35 minutes, that's where we want you to maintain the 60% of your maximum heart rate the longest. And that'll generate the most intensity you're going to get and also increase your cardiovascular endurance. We talked about sustained exercise and elevating your heart rate with the resistance on the bike when you pedal through those commercials, and also the incline increase, whether or not you're decreasing the speed or leaving it the same when you increase your incline on the treadmill. And in our time, longer workouts, 10 to 60 minutes, longer sessions, you want to include a warm-up and a cool-down. Warm-ups generally 3 to 5 minutes, and a cool-down's 3 to 5 minutes as well, depending on how long or how hard you work during that workout. If you do an hour-long class, you'll typically have 5 to 8 minutes of a warm-up and 5 to 8 minutes of a slight stretch and a cool-down to follow up. So in 60 minutes, you're probably at work for 45 of those. But be mindful of how hard your body is working, and the more intense workouts you do, you're going to need a little bit more of a cool down to bring your heart rate back down safely. Little chart right here that we were talking about. So as you see these pop up, if you want to jot down some things for yourself to kind of keep in line, you can go with your current program and everything, at least the FITT, and then what do you want to progress with your cardio program? You want to be able to walk a little further, or do you want to be able to walk more of an incline for a longer period of time? Strength training. We talked about the various forms. We have 2 to 3 days a week, or you can do upper lower body. If we're doing a total body, we look at 2 days, possibly 3 days of total body, depending on work schedules and everything like that. How much time you have available to you is what we need to look at being realistic. If your work schedule requires you, 5, 10 to 12 hour days, and you only can work out on the weekends, so that's when we're going to do 2 total body workouts, ideally. If you have 4 days available to you, then we'll do upper lower body splits, which 2 days we do upper body exercises and 2 days we would do lower body exercises. When lifting weights, I'll take a step back. Have each of you met with a trainer, whether here at Weight Management, Comp Rehab, and any one of the Ys? Have each of you been able to touch base, whether in the past, near past, or... Good. Okay. Have you, those of you, Kathy and Anna, have you started doing any strength training with your trainer now? And Lynn, have you not connected with a trainer through the program just yet? Awesome. So when we're lifting, I want to start out by how much weight you will lift. And the reason I asked about trainers, just so I know, where we're at, making sure every one of you are taken care of with being able to do some strength training, because it's ideal and it's a big part of your weight loss or weight management. So how much weight will you lift? What resistance level will you work against? We all have a minimum and we all have a maximum. So a lot of times when we start out our training, whether here or training outside of here, we have an assessment that we'll do and kind of see where our strength is day one. And from there, we'll know every 2 to 4 weeks we're going to progress in some form or another, whether it's adding an extra 3 to 5 reps into there or adding a little bit more weight. And by adding more weight, if we're at 5 pounds, general progression is to 8 or 10 pounds to follow that. We also have 12, 15 pounds and so on, but we try to go in 2 to 3 pound increments or 2 to 5 pound depending on the difference in the weights we have. We'll increase slowly over time with each of those, but we want your body to adapt each time before we're ready to give it something new. And that'll increase your intensity. So you need to figure out which one you're going to work against, how much weight or how much resistance. So if we're doing, 3 sets of 12, weight's moderate, well, our next step was we can go 3 sets of 15, same weight, or we can increase the weight and go back to 3 sets of 10. So anytime you're increasing reps with a weight, that's fine. You can continue to progress that way. If you want to increase your weight and everything by 5 or 10 pounds, we want you to bring back your repetitions a little bit. So your volume isn't as great, and it will let you work that up. So with your pen or paper, if you have that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to increase strength training or progress in a timely manner, which will hit type and time with your dumbbells, bands, body weight, yoga, Pilates, things of that nature. So if you start out now with 2 times 10, 2 sets of 10 reps, you'll go 210, 212, 215, and the highest number we want you to get to is 220. And then once we're consistently doing that, then we can go back and we can go to 310, 312, 315, 320. And once 320 is consistent for about 4 weeks, then we're going to increase our weight. And then as you increase that weight, we're going to fall back to the very beginning, which is 210, 212, 215, 220. And then 3 sets of everything. And you don't always have to increase your weight. If you get to 320 and you try to increase your weight and you're at 2 sets of 10 and it's just too much, well then go back to the weight you were initially at, and we're just going to hold pat at 3 sets of 20 for a little while longer. And with that, you're going to maintain your strength, but you're going to increase your muscular endurance. Okay? Everybody's all right with that chart? I know it was a little bit much, but it's basic when you think about just trying to increase one thing at a time. I don't want you to go from 2 sets of 10 at a certain weight to 3 sets of 20 at a heavier weight. We want to progress in a clean, easy, realistic manner so we don't hurt ourselves, and it doesn't push you to not want to strength train or anything like that. Awesome. As you can see, your sample for progression is a complete 3 sets of each exercise rather than 2. So if you're doing 2 sets of 10 and you know what, I want to try 3 sets of 10 today, you can only get 8. Well, that's where your journaling comes into play. So if you have 20 pounds and we're doing leg press 20 pounds, you write down 2 sets of 10 and I did 1 set of 8. That is perfectly okay. So then what our goal would be from there for progression is I did 2 sets of 10 and 1 set of 8. In 2 weeks, I want to be able to do 3 sets of 10. And that's where your progression and being realistic comes into play. Is you're already doing 2 sets of 10. We just got to get those other 2 reps in 2 weeks. Or if it takes 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or if you do it in 2 days, that's fine. But journaling will allow you to see your progression. It also helps us to look at your progression so we can see where you're at and where you want to get to. So your additional tips for planning a strength training routine, this is why it's ideal for us to kind of connect with a trainer, whether here, one of our off-site locations. You want to warm up with movements to use muscles involved in your workout. So if we're working upper body one day and chest press is on the agenda, we may start with wall push-ups. And that's just going to get your form and your arms moving a little bit to kind of get those muscles loose and warmed up before we put more resistance to those. And learning the basic lifting techniques and work on form before adding resistance is why we generally start with a lighter weight and a low resistance level as far as repetitions and sets. Before we start adding anything, we want to make sure that you understand the movement and what muscles are actually working before we start to put any stress or challenge to those muscles. And we just talked about don't sacrifice your form for finishing a set. So today's goal was 3 sets of 10, but that third one, you can only get 7 or 8 reps. That's okay. Put the weight down. If you want to try and get the last 2, that's fine. But if you want to, I did 2 sets of 10 and I was only able to get 8 on the last one. Perfectly okay. We know that's our goal for next time is I want to be able to finish strong. A lot of times our muscles just want to give out. Our energy level might be low. That's all right. Those are the notes that we want you to write down and take. So we're going to work all of your major muscle groups with 8 to 10 exercises. And work on balance before fatiguing your muscles. So he's doing balance training. We offer a new core strengthening class on Tuesday mornings. It's kind of early, it's 7 to 7:30, but we work on balance and core strength and everything. It's too early for a lot of people. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it was just the times that we're in here and everything. So what we could do is, you guys pick up my contact and everything, or when you're in the next time, we'll talk about balance exercises so we can start doing some of those on our own. And I always give workouts and everything like that to take with you, but that's where we want to work on your balance before fatiguing your muscles. If you're going to work on balance, go ahead and start the day once you get warmed up. Before you do your initial strength training, work on a little bit of balance exercises. One leg stands, sitting up against the wall, lifting one leg out. Very simple movements if our knees will allow, our back. You don't want to put anything in the stress related. And you don't have to do all of your muscles every day unless you're time constrained. We want you to try to split them up if you can. We talked about the 2-day splits and then the 4-day upper lower body splits. So our large muscle groups to small muscle groups. You ladies see each of the muscles that are listed. So we look at chest and back are your large ones in that group. They cover more area, more surface area in generalization. Your shoulders, biceps, and triceps are a little smaller. So we look at 8 to 10 exercises for chest and back per se on a day, and then 10 to 12 total between shoulders, biceps, and triceps. So if we're looking at chest and back doing those, you're going to work anywhere between 4 to 6 sets combined. So if we do 2 to 3 sets of chest and back each, then we're at our 4 to 6 module there. With shoulders, biceps, and triceps, if you do 3 to 4 of each one of those, we're going to hit the 10 to 12 range. Thighs, glutes, hamstrings. Larger muscle groups are thighs and hamstrings. Your glutes and your calves are smaller range. That's why squats, stairs, walking on a treadmill, things of that nature tend to burn a lot longer for our legs because they're larger. I always tell folks, think of logs. The larger logs you throw on a fire, it's going to burn a lot longer. So the more heat you put into your legs, the more it's going to burn. We look at how to increase your resistance after you're able to complete 2 extra reps in 2 to 4 sessions. Always cool down and stretch the muscles that you work. Ideal. And so if we're doing strength training in Zumba, not solely strength training, but when you're in there and everything, you're going to cool down. When you're doing strength training, whether it's with a trainer or on your own using the equipment, you want to be able to stretch those muscles out. So we want to locate, if we're doing upper body stretches, I want you to stretch those upper body muscles and not stretch your legs just as much. Stretch the muscle that you worked. Ideally, we all know that that's going to be the case. If you're working upper and lower body, make sure you devote half as much time to the upper and lower body stretching after your workouts. Okay with upper body, lower body, large muscle groups, small muscle groups, how often we want to be able to work those. Start with working your large muscle groups first. That'll allow your body to get warmed up, and then you can move into your smaller muscle groups. And whether your obliques and abdominal area and lower back, those are key for building core strength, which our core strength enables our balance and everything. So a lack of balance comes from a weaker core or not as strong as some of our other muscles. So as we work more, think more about balance, we want to try to highlight those muscle groups just as much. So building core strength, it isn't about working on doing abdominal crunches on the machine or crunches on the floor. We want you to be able to do, planks or work that lower back. So if you're going to work one muscle group up front, you want to work the opposing muscle group as well. So chest and back, you're pushing one, you're pulling another. Biceps and triceps, you're pulling one, you're pushing another. Okay? And again, we have the FITT principle there for your current strength training program. So you can write these down as we go, or kind of keep a mental image in your head on what you want everything to look like. Flexibility and range of motion. Stretching, you're going to have to stretch every day. You don't have to work out every day to start there, but stretching, 2 to 3 days a week, work on some range of motion exercises. If you have a limitation, hips, knees, ankles, shoulders, back, you're going to probably work on a little bit more range of motion when you're with your trainer, so we can start to develop some strength and stability back. Your intensity, of course, slight discomfort, but it shouldn't be painful. Nothing that we do as exercise, we want you to feel in any kind of pain or be sore for more than 48 hours afterwards. If that's the case, we need to reassess how hard we're working during those workouts. Yoga, Pilates, and general stretching are forms of flexibility and range of motion training. And when we do hold our stretches, 20 to 30 seconds, 1 to 3 sets. So stretch left leg, 20 seconds, switch to the right leg and back. Always start with 2 sets of 20 and ranging up, 3 sets of 30. If it's difficult to hold for 20 seconds to begin with, just hold what you can, write down the time, then the next time, again, with our progression, you want to try to hold a little bit longer. And increasing your flexibility. We've all had to do the presidential FITT challenge in middle school, possibly high school. You're, sit and reach. Weren't able always to touch your toes, or standing down, touching your toes might be difficult. Hold what we can, count the seconds, and just kind of hold. Don't statically, you're just kind of bouncing up and down, pulling your legs. You don't want to stretch and tear any possible muscle fibers in the back of your leg. So slowly increase your distance each day, and every time you stretch, you should be able to stretch a little bit further, a little bit further. We just wanted to elongate that muscle a little bit more in a healthy way. Our flexibility and range of motion chart. A lot of these are the same. They're changing the top portion and then the flexibility program at the bottom. Balance training, 3 days a week. So with Zumba and everything being cardio, it's a little bit of balance because you have to be light on your feet. So doing that balance, you're going to work those small stabilizer muscles in your lower part of your body, but it also kind of gives those nerves and everything the momentum to know what they're going to do each time. Progressing through, you'll progress your challenge with your balance. As the longer you practice it, yoga might start out as a 30-minute class, but they have an hour and a half yoga. So first goal is 30 minutes, but in 2 months I want to be able to do 90 minutes of yoga. Any questions on the balance training? And am I moving at a good speed? Am I going too quick? Any questions for me so far? Okay. Oops. Relaxation training. So we have daily relaxation. It's key to take time away from your normal activities for at least 5 minutes a day. Trying to get away for 15 minutes a day is kind of hard to do, but if you can get the 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at lunchtime, 5 minutes in the afternoon to step away from what you're doing. We often get caught in creatures of habit and sitting at a computer, staring at a screen, or doing work, interacting with people. Take time each day to find, just for a walk, to go walking, and that's where you see the intensity. It doesn't have to be very intense. You can walk, you can just sit. I do music. As you ladies can see, the type music therapy is in there, which allows me to do a little bit of meditation on my own, but I listen to music after lunch, or if I have a break throughout the day, I may go for a walk around our building, but just listening to a couple songs, which may be between 3 and 6 minutes, to kind of relax and let my mind wander away from what is actually in front of me. We don't often take time enough for ourselves for relaxation training. We just kind of think, oh yeah, I'm doing some deep breathing, or you get a massage is another way. Yoga's in there if you like to paint, if you're artistic, do some art therapy, but those things are needed to allow your muscles, your brain, you want it to kind of relax. When you're so focused and driven in anything that we do, especially with exercise, we can forget what our end goal is, and that is, maintaining a healthy lifestyle. If you focus so intently 5 to 7 days a week on just trying to be, better than or perfect, and I don't want anyone to achieve perfection, it's difficult, but trying to be a little bit better for your exercise the day before, relaxation is the only way that we're going to be able to accomplish those and not feel that it was you got there in the way that you want to get there. So set aside time for yourself each day. Do your balance training, your strength training, and cardiovascular exercises 2 to 3 days a week. But on those days, and even on your off days, take time for yourself to read, relax, get away from everything. If you can, take some time out. You can start out with 5 minutes if you want to get to, if you have 30 minutes or 60 minutes, then feel free to take 60 minutes of time each day or every other day for relaxation training sessions. And Lynn, you're training to be a triathlete? If that's a goal, we can always work on it. We can swim. Swimming is the tougher of the three, I think, for most people that aren't already swimmers. But we want you, I don't, if you want to be a triathlete, but I want to try to understand, and the next time you're in the building, each of you try to locate me. I'm always in the gym area, and we can talk about some of these goals. So I know you have plenty more questions and everything, but the reason is writing down some of these on the relaxation training is knowing what your goals are. Each of you individually have your own set of exercise-related goals, I'm sure. It's hard for me to, like, I can explain things to you like we are now, but being able to look and see what your goals are and help you formulate a plan. And you have the knowledge that we've talked about for the last hour or so on how to progress through each one of these, but understanding what your beginning point is and what your end goal will be is how we'll better understand how to progress together. I want you to feel comfortable in your progression of knowing that what I'm doing now will help me accomplish my goal 3 to 6 months from now. Does that sound a little bit better? So the next time you ladies are in, whether it's to see me, one of the dietitians, behavior, I always tell folks, if you're in the building and you don't have an exercise appointment scheduled, but you have a dire need to ask a question, my door is always open. Literally, it's the only door that you can just push and it comes right open. It doesn't have like a lock or it doesn't stop when it shuts. You can always just push it open and come right in with any questions you have and present those to me and Jason, my colleagues, also in there. But I always want to help you ladies understand where we're at and where we want to get to, and quickest way, but the most beneficial way for you to get there. And if 2 years you want to become a triathlete, we'll figure out a way to get there together. A few more final thoughts and everything. I'm sure I covered most of these. Your SMART goals we talked a lot about. Start low, progress slow. Plan to include different activities and main interests, which we talked about. Variety is going to be helpful, especially when you're doing a lot of exercise classes at the gym and everything. Allow your time to recover. We talked about relaxation, but also on your rest days, you can go for casual walks. You don't have to just sit around and not do anything on those rest days. Recovery walks are always key. Journaling and tracking your exercise is one way that we'll be able to look and check back and see where you progressed and how we're moving forward if we need to adjust anything. Always have a partner. For accountability, if you want to work out alone, music may be that partner that you need to kind of keep you moving. Any questions about anything today, about any part of the seminar? Yes, ma'am, of course. Well, I'm sure I will be seeing a little bit more of you ladies in the future. Doors always open. So feel free to stop by.